It says we are streaming live, and this is such a great time for you to learn everything you ever wanted to learn about cholesterol. So make sure that all you teachers' pets that are already seated in the front row seat are sharing this. Let people know that we're going to talk about cholesterol, statins, everything that you want to know about cholesterol, but we're afraid to ask. Okay, so I just started the recorder, and I just want to make sure that you do your part, because this is such an informative show with Dr. Stephen Sinatra, cardiologist. And he is, wait till you hear more about Dr. Sinatra, because now we're going to fasten our seatbelts because we're going to learn and grow together. It's time to dance, Dr. Sinatra.
The Lillian McDermott Show.
We love, we fear, bridges we burn, we make mistakes, then we live and learn. When life gets tough, and it seems like your best ain't good enough. If you're in need of hope, you know where I'll be right here. Right here, and when you need a friend, you can count on me. I'll be right here, waiting for
you. This is the place you can always turn to when you need a friend. The Lillian McDermott Show. To reach out to Lillian, visit her on the web at whenyouneedafriend.com. Now let's all learn together. Here's Lillian McDermott.
Oh, hello, my listening friends. It's so nice we can meet each other on the air on this beautiful, best day ever. Sorry, I was having a little glitch right there when I got the microphone came on. You know, for those of you who are new to the classroom, please know I've been waiting for you. This is a safe place where you can go to when you need a friend. It is my commitment to provide alternative ways to heal, and it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening, as well as my viewing friends, will feel empowered to embrace a new truth and live the life of your dreams. Now, today, we're going to talk about a topic that most of you think you know a lot about. And what you're going to discover is that we only know the myths about cholesterol. So, Integrative Cardiologist Dr. Stephen Sinatra, who was accidentally placed in all these wonderful integrative classrooms that made him beyond like a Swiss Army knife of cardiologists. He's also a psychotherapist that works with biogenetics. I'm trying to think, bioenergy. It's, oh, you're muted, Dr. Sinatra. Bioenergetics. Is that I get that right? Psychotherapist. He's certified in nutrition and anti-aging. He's a wonderful Swiss Army knife when it comes to healing our heart. And so today we're going to talk about the myths about cholesterol. The book is called The Great Cholesterol Myth, and why lowering your cholesterol won't prevent heart disease, and the statin-free plan that will. And so we're giving away 3 of these today. 3. So 407-373-5959, claim it in your comment section and then text it, and we will get placed in the winner's basket, and then 3 people will be selected for this. So all of you listening on BitChute, YouTube, Facebook, podcasts, all have an opportunity to win this book. And since it is our sole purpose in life to give and receive love and knowledge, I am grateful that Dr. Stephen Sinatra is here to do just that. Welcome, Dr. Sinatra, to the classroom.
Hey, Lillian, it's great to hear. It's great to be here. And I've been called a lot of metaphors, but the Swiss Army knife is the first, I'll tell you that.
Well, that means you do a lot more than just cardiology. You take the best from both worlds, the East from the West, and you take energy medicine. You do it. You took you take emotion and you make that connection with the heart and brain. It is so important that a doctor be well-rounded. One size does not fit all. And many doctors just treat the number, not the person. And so you are so good at doing all of it. That's why you're a Swiss Army knife.
That's really interesting. But I'll tell you this, Lillian, the learning never ceases. I mean, people think you do 4 years of college and 4 years of medical school and 5 years of training after that, and you become a doctor. But it takes decades to learn this stuff. It really does. I think the best doctors out there are the ones with gray hairs because, they've been around a long time. They see what works. And, one of the worst things about being a doctor is you finally get it when you're 75, 85, 95, but then it's too late. You know what I mean? It takes a lifetime to learn this stuff. So I still go to conferences. I'm still learning, and it's a great field to be in.
Well, I think that's critical right there, that you're still learning. Many doctors get a degree, and many of us get a degree in anything. And then we think, okay, we're done growing. Maybe they'll do continuing education in their field, but when it comes to the emotional and the spiritual, they stop growing. And so it's good to find a doctor, a combination of whether it's a doctor or someone that you trust or a friend or whatever, that is curious about learning, because you say that it takes a good 10 years to get to a place where you feel comfortable, but then after 10 years, it's obsolete and you have to learn again and again and again. So I'm glad that I'm glad that you don't feel that you've learned it all and that you know it all, but you're still learning it all. So that's good.
And I'll tell you, listeners, something else. The Biogenome Project was discovered in, I think, 1993, where they sorted out our DNA. And basically, they looked at our DNA profile. And, many of us are born with weaknesses, genetic weaknesses, or inborn errors of metabolism, or spontaneous mutations. And, medicine before 1993, let me say it this way, medicine before 2010, because it takes a long time to assimilate new discoveries. In other words, let me take coenzyme Q10. It was discovered in 1972, but it took 3 or 4 decades, for it to really, rise up to, being a superstar. The same thing is true of the Biogenome Project. When I was in medical school, we would see a patient, listen to their symptoms, listen to their heart and lungs, blah, 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 do an exam, and form a differential diagnosis. In other words, could the patient have this, this, or this? Get some laboratory tests and sort it out. You know what the doctors of the future are going to do, Lillian? They're going to plug in your genetic profile. And they're going to say, oh, you got genetic weaknesses here and there and also genetic strengths. Oh, you got this problem wrong. Oh, that's easy. We can fix that. We can give you, a certain supplement, or tell you to avoid certain foods, or, lose weight because you have too many inflammatory mediators. In other words, we can pinpoint directly into what's wrong with you. So I think medicine is going to change dramatically over the next 10 to 15 years.
Absolutely. And I hope it becomes for prevention, because a lot of people get these tests, these genetic tests, and they get, they find out that they have a predisposition for something, and all of a sudden they're freaking out because they think they're going to get it. I always say use genetic testing for prevention, because if you know you have a predisposition, then you can stop it right before it happens, or stop it before, figure out ways to keep from turning on that gene. Keep that gene turned off. But what people do is they mutilate themselves. They remove their breasts, they remove their body parts because they're afraid they're going to get cancer or any other disease. And I really do believe that that is the wrong way to use that testing.
No, I agree. In other words, people think you are your genes, but the environment selects out the genes. So in other words, you're absolutely right. You can use a genetic profile, but the environment is equally as, I think the environment is more important. I'll tell you this, Lillian, as a heart specialist, I've seen a lot of sudden death in my career. And I remember seeing families where a young male would die in his 30s or 40s, and that they'd have children then, and the children would grow up with a nemesis complex. You know what that is? That's a complex. I wrote about it in Heartbreak and Heart Disease. And basically, a lot of these adults I would see who lost a parent when they were 5, 6 years old, or even earlier, many of them would grow up thinking that I wasn't going to live to 40, 45, 50. In other words, they thought they were going to die. And many times they would fulfill that prophecy. In other words, it could happen. But I would tell people point blank, do not believe it. Don't believe your genetics. The environment selects out everything. And, that's how I really honed in on cardiovascular risk factors and sugar and cholesterol and high blood pressure and emotional stress. And the list goes on and on and on. But with this biogenome project, it's going to be a lot easier. It'll really help us hone in on what we have to, look at. Like you mentioned BRCA2 gene, for example, with breast cancer. Mm-hmm. Well, that's great. And the same thing is true of Alzheimer's disease. We're seeing a ton of Alzheimer's disease.
ApoE, yeah.
And one of the alleles, we have the APO4 allele. We have these certain alleles that actually they have a lot to do with cholesterol. Mm-hmm. But if people are dealt, let's say 2 APO4s, a lot of people think, oh no, I'm in double handcuffs for Alzheimer's disease. But if you have a genetic weakness and you're 40 or 50 years old, you can do a lot to help prevent Alzheimer's disease going down the road. So there's a lot of things you can do with the genetic profiles.
Well, I tell you what, I think what the conversation we're going to have today is probably going to save a lot of lives, because I was shocked as I was diving into this, very shocked about how many things we don't know about cholesterol, how many myths. I'm so grateful that you wrote this book at 6 years ago, and the book is going to be is revised, and it's now, you can buy it now, but you can get 3 of them. We're going to give 3 away today. So make sure you claim it below in the comment section, and you text me at 407-373-5959. It's 2 steps to get part of it. Your name will be a part of the winner's basket. And not only that, 3 people will be selected for this book. Okay, so let's get started on this book. Did you find that there were so many myths? Did you have some of these myths? Did you believe these myths were true as you graduated from medical school about cholesterol and the importance of lowering cholesterol and taking statins? Did you buy into that in medical school?
Of course I did. I absolutely bought it hook, line, and sinker. I mean, Lillian, I received my cardiovascular boards when I was 31 years old. I became board certified as a cardiologist, did loads of training. Then I went to a community hospital, and I became the director of medical education. And then after I was director of medical education for 5 or 6 years, I became chief of cardiology. And when I was chief of cardiology, I was lecturing for the drug companies, Merck and Pfizer. I wrote about it in the book, and they paid me. I mean, it was incredible money. It was like $1,000 a lecture. I mean, that was huge money.
Back then, yeah.
Today, and back then, I'm looking in my early 30s. I'm 73 right now. I mean, that was huge, right? So here I was lecturing all over the country on cholesterol. But remember, I was a CoQ10 user at the same time. Mm-hmm. I mean, I discovered CoQ10 from the original researchers who discovered CoQ10. So I started to use CoQ10 in the early 80s, around 1982, 83. I saw a young woman who had a postpartum cardiomyopathy. You know what that means? In other words, she delivers a normal baby, but the baby, for some reason, drains all her vitamins and minerals, and it weakens the heart. It's a very rare condition. And many times it's lethal to the mother. In other words, she goes into profound heart failure. Fortunately, I only saw 2 cases in my entire lifetime, because it's a bad situation, especially for a young woman in her 20s.
Sure.
To die of heart failure. So when I saw this woman, I was investigating CoQ10, and basically I put her on CoQ10, just 10 milligrams 3 times a day, because I wasn't using high doses back then. And she said, after a week, she says, "Doc, I think I feel better." I said, "Really?" So I doubled the dose. A week later, she says, "I know I feel better because I'm not coughing all night." I'll go, "Let's double the dose again." I saw her after the 3rd week, and she says, "I can do the laundry. I can walk up and down the stairs. I mean, this is incredible." And then 2 months later, when she was feeling good, she got a call from the Medical College of Virginia stating that they found a heart for her. In other words, they typed in crossed the heart. She calls me up. She goes, "What am I going to do now?" And I said to her, "Listen, this is your call. I said, it's up to you. If you're feeling good, if it was me, I would stay with my own heart. But if you want to have a heart transplant, it's up to you. She didn't do it. And it was amazing. Now she's in her mid 70s. She's feeling good. I still see her from time to time. But I have a dozen children like this as well, who refused heart transplants, you know, when they were, or they couldn't find hearts when they were children. And now as adults, they refused because, you know, again, I was using coenzyme Q10, you know, at actually an early age. But here's the hook with cholesterol, and forgive me for, you know, taking a while to answer it.
No, it's okay.
Then I read in an article came out from India stating that CoQ10 was being mutilated, or, you know, the blood levels were going down because in statin drugs. In other words, CoQ10 shares the same biochemical pathway as cholesterol. So when you kill cholesterol with a statin, now you're not only knocking out cholesterol is going lower, but coenzyme Q10 is going lower. So Lillian, I had this huge disconnect. I said, wait a minute. How can a drug be so good for the heart, you know, for the heart, right? Lowering cholesterol, but at the same time, kill the vital nutrient that the heart needs for survival? It was a total disconnect. Lillian, when I read that article, immediately, like the snap of a finger, I stopped lecturing for the drug companies.
Wow. I
stopped. I said, oh my God. So then I did my own research and I looked at all the literature. And then one of the I was a reviewer for journals at the time. And one of the journals wanted me to write an article on cholesterol. And I go, no, I'm not going to do it. And they said, why? You know, the editors. And I told them this story, like I told you. He says, oh, we'll have somebody else write it. Why don't you do an editorial? I said, sure, I'll do an editorial. I spent 80 hours getting all this information, looking at all this studies, blah, blah, blah. I empowered myself even more. I killed myself. And I wrote an editorial for the journals. And then I realized that I was a definite cardiologist in recovery. There was no doubt about it. There was no doubt about it, you know? So, you know, these things were placed in my path for a reason. And then when Johnny Bowden called me up and he's, you know, a couple of decades later, and he says, you want to write the great cholesterol myth? I said, I'd be happy to. And that's how it started.
That is wonderful. So you say, and this is going to flip people out, that the people with the highest cholesterol, the longer they live. So can you elaborate before people go, what?
Yeah, this is absolutely incredible. I was part of the Framingham study. In other words, I was chief of cardiology at a hospital in Connecticut. And I had patients who lived all over New England. And I had patients in the Framingham study. Now, Framingham is in Massachusetts, maybe about an hour and a half from where I practice. But I would see patients who were on the Massachusetts border who came to my office, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, this was an incredible study that went on for decades, more than 5 decades. So they collected a lot of data on people with low cholesterol, higher cholesterol, familial hypercholesterolemia, you name it. And it was amazing. At the end of the study, they found out that the people with the highest cholesterols were outliving the people with lower cholesterols. And all these cardiologists I was working with at the time, myself included, because I was a young cardiologist, we always thought that the higher the cholesterol, the quicker you would die.
Correct.
So, but I didn't hold to that dogma, you know, intensively. I'll tell you why. Because when I was doing cardiac catheterization on a day-to-day basis, I was seeing people with cholesterols of 240. I thought they would be riddled with heart disease. I do the angiogram and they were normal. Then I was seeing people with cholesterols of 180. I do the angiogram and they were riddled with heart disease. You know, it didn't make any sense. So I started to question it early on. And then when this Framingham data came out, my colleagues from the Boston area, they were becoming psychotic. They couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe it. And now it's still going on. Now, let me tell you something about cholesterol, especially in this day and age of viruses that we're seeing, you know? Mm-hmm. I mean, whether it's influenza or, you know, any of these viruses. Mm-hmm. Children with high cholesterols, they were protected from deadly, I mean deadly. Have you ever heard of MRSA staph?
No, I have not. What is that?
This is a staphylococcal infection That's methicillin resistant. In other words, it doesn't respond to any drugs. And when children get it, Lillian, it's devastating. I mean, when adults get it, they can die because we don't have any antibiotics for it because there's resistance.
Correct.
It's a very resistant staph. And what they found in children was children with the highest cholesterols were surviving MRSA staph.
Wow.
This is another disconnect. So there was something about cholesterol that protected children from bacterial infections, virulent bacterial infections. Then let's take it another step. We wrote in The Great Cholesterol Myth that people who were getting gastrointestinal infections with higher cholesterols, they were protected from gastrointestinal infections. So there's something about cholesterol that's protective against either viruses or bacterial infections or whatever have you. So in this day and age of all these crazy viruses going on, hey, having a high cholesterol may be protective. It might be
but so when I hear you say that, I think of all the trans fats and all the fats in the world, that low fat diets, cholesterol diets, all these things that are trying to bring our cholesterol down. But as we're reading this book, and by the way, claim it 407-373-5959. When I look at it, I think, okay, is all fat created equal? Is all cholesterol created equal? Because you also talk about the ratio. So let's dive a little bit more and say, because somebody might say, hey, I've got high cholesterol, but they might be a pizza or a Happy Meal away from a heart attack. So let's talk about what is real good cholesterol. Is all high cholesterol good? Or is there a time that is not?
Yeah. Now, in the edition you're giving away, the information is absolutely correct. But over the next 5 years, a lot of new things have been brought to the table. For example, when we wrote the book, you could take LDL cholesterol, which is allegedly the villain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you could subtype it into small particle A, particle AB. I mean, large particle A, small particle B, and there's AB, right?
Okay.
And then HDL had a few components. Now today, there's several components. In other words, we've dissected the HDL molecule into various components. Some are protective, some aren't. We used to think back 5 years ago that the higher your cholesterol, the higher the HDL, the better. So we thought if you're a woman and you have a HDL of 90 to 100, we were saying, oh, that's fantastic. But now today we're finding, for example, that the sweet spot for HDL is actually 55 to 65. This is cutting edge information I'm giving you now.
Yeah.
This is in the new book, right?
Yes.
So anyway, now look, if you have an HDL of 55 to 65, that's great. I like that. HDLs of 90 to 100, 120, they can be dysfunctional HDLs, meaning that it's not good. It's like having a high LDL. Now, let me get to what you said before, which is very crucial. And we wrote about this in the book as well. I like the triglyceride to HDL ratio. So what this means, Lillian, is if you have a triglyceride of 100 and an HDL of 50, well, what's your ratio? It's 100 divided by 50. It's 2, right?
2.
So if that ratio is under 2, I really like it. If it's 1.5, I like it even better. If it's 1, I like it even better. I don't want to go below 1, but if you have a 1 to 2 ratio, you don't need to see me in the office because that ratio is protective. I really like that. And it's interesting. That was written up by the Harvard group back in 1998. And that was an interesting situation. And they stated in their research that was like, you could power that up 15 times, meaning that you could take this one to the bank. I mean, if you had a low ratio, this was absolutely a factor in preventing, inflammation or coronary artery disease. So that's really great. Let's look at a typical diabetic. Typically, diabetics run triglycerides of 2, 3, 4, 500, and they have low HDLs. So think of it this way, Lillian. Suppose you're a diabetic, you're a woman about 45 years old, you have overweight status, you're on insulin, you have a triglycerides of 300, and you have an HDL of 30. What's your ratio?
Oh, 10.
10. Bad ratio. I worry about those women. I worry about them, or a male as well. I just used a woman just for an example, but it could be a male. So the triglyceride to HDL ratio, HDL on the bottom, triglyceride on top, that's really crucial. And even for your listeners today, if they go to a doctor, they should ask them for that. I want a fasting triglycerides and I want a fasting cholesterol profile, and I want to do that. Now, let's take this a step further. We wrote about in the book back then the cholesterol particle called Lp(a). Now, several years ago, that variant was sort of common/uncommon in people. We would see it frequently. I would pick up high Lp(a)s. And this is the real cholesterol story. This is a very small cholesterol particle, Lillian, very small. It has what we call a disulfide bridge, but it's very inflammatory and it causes blood clotting. And years ago, we weren't seeing it that often, but today, I don't know why, I have no idea, but now we're seeing it possibly in 1 in 5, and I've seen in 1 in 10 people. It's much more common today than it was, several years ago. I can't explain why. But even I have children in my own family. One of my children has a high Lp(a) when my wife and I didn't. So a lot of it is spontaneous mutation, maybe because of the more toxic environment. Because remember, cholesterol is a repair molecule. So genetically, things might have changed, but it was changed for the wrong reason. I mean, cholesterol does, lay down, fibrin and plaque, and it's, because it's involved in a healing modality. So maybe the more toxic environment we're living in, genetically, we're seeing more and more patients, but it's paradoxical. It really shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
So the best antidote for Lp(a) are not statin drugs. I mean, they're things like lumbrokinase, nanokinase, serrapeptase. They're like what we call fibrinolytics, or these are clot busters that don't allow for the cholesterol to become inflammatory, so to speak. But anyway, the cholesterol story is very, very complex. It's not a simple story like everybody would like to believe it is. It's very, very complex.
Well, let's talk about cholesterol, because we've been told cholesterol is taboo, that we should not have any cholesterol. We should have cholesterol real low. But you're saying cholesterol drives our sexual hormones.
Yes, sir.
There's so many good things that come from cholesterol. So let's talk about the benefits of cholesterol. What does cholesterol do for us? And if we have low cholesterol, what are some of the side effects that, it seems like, doctors are diagnosing people, or the medications that are being given are going in the wrong direction. Instead of improving the cholesterol, they're suppressing it. So
and again, to reiterate, in this crazy day of all these crazy Ebola viruses, SARS-like viruses, you name it, influenzas, this crazy day of viruses, cholesterol could be protective. I mean, that's the thing
it helps with vitamin D too.
That's the thing.
As well.
That's the link. You said it.
Yeah.
You read my mind?
No, well, I read the book.
You have mental telepathy. Get into my head.
I'm in you. You're in me. You're in my head, Dr. Sinatra. You're in my head.
You see, Lillian, you said it. Here's the deal. The sunlight, the sun that we take in through our skin, the cholesterol in our skin, right? In our tissue, where we take the sunlight, it combines with the cholesterol, and we form magical vitamin D. And I got to tell you, vitamin D is a shining star in battling these crazy viruses that we're seeing. The higher your vitamin D, the better your immune system. No doubt about it. You can take that to the bank. But again, how do we make vitamin D? From the cholesterol in our body with again, the sunlight or the UV light, we form, they're complex names. They're 125 hydroxycholesterol. And, I don't want to use this jumbo.
Yeah, but what causes the cholesterol to be what causes the cholesterol to become what we need it to become in our body? Is it the sun? Is it what comes first, the chicken or the egg? What comes first? How is cholesterol created in our body?
Well, cholesterol is made in our body. We make it. In other words, a lot of people think it comes from the diet. Only about 10 to 15%, Lillian, comes from the diet. I mean, if you ate caviar every day, which is pure cholesterol, or if you ate a dozen eggs a week, you might only raise your cholesterol by 5 or 10%.
So what does it for us? What makes our cholesterol,
our liver,
help our body function?
Yeah. In other words, our body makes cholesterol because it's really a repair mechanism.
Yeah.
And, our body makes it, we need it. And you said it, we need it for our sex hormones. We need it for bile, for example. We need it for vitamin D, like I just mentioned. I mean, we need it for so many things in the body that it doesn't make sense to kill it, with drugs.
So I know that some people are plant-based eaters, like I am a plant-based eater, and there are people that are they love animals. And so because we're getting this from what we are eating as well, right? You said just a little bit, but is the cholesterol from animals different than the cholesterol from the plants that we produce? Yeah,
you are correct. Yeah. The more animal flesh you eat, again, 5 to 10 to 15% comes from the diet. So your cholesterol will go higher somewhat, but we make our cholesterol. Our body is making it continuously, So in other words, vegetarians, one thing about vegetarians I like, in fact, my favorite diet to my patients was 80% vegetarian, 20% meat. And I'll tell you why. I'm a CoQ10 guy. I've spent 40 years of my life researching CoQ10. I've done so much research on CoQ10, it'll turn your hair upside down.
I love it.
I mean, I've done it in a mouse model, the dog model I produced on. We did the rodent model, we did the horse model, and the human model. I mean, I've written so many papers, and I mean, I really believe in coenzyme Q10. Here's the problem with vegetarians. Coenzyme Q10 is expressed in animal flesh. In other words, it's found in plants, but the majority of it's like carnitine. Carnitine comes from the animal kingdom. So does coenzyme Q10. Now, I'll never forget this, Lillian. Oh my God. It's like, when you see thousands of patients in the office and you get sort of a cadence going on, you know who's going to be healthy, who's not going to be healthy, especially when you were a busy cardiologist like myself. I mean, I was seeing 60 to 70 people a day,
wow,
maybe 40 people in a hospital on rounds. I was on call every other night. I mean, it was a disaster. I got to tell you. I mean, I had a baptism by fire for 20 years. It was like crazy, but I learned a lot. I learned a lot. And I'll never forget this. I saw 2 Asian women, both in their 40s, both vegetarians, both with breast cancer and heart failure at the same time.
Wow.
Now, when you see, you don't see life-threatening diseases, 2 different life-threatening diseases in the same patient. That doesn't happen, So when I saw breast cancer and heart failure in these women, I measured their CoQ10 levels, and their CoQ10 levels were almost non-existent. In other words, they were pure vegetarians, pure vegans. They weren't getting a CoQ10. And there's no doubt about it, Lillian, lower CoQ10 levels predispose to breast cancer, and they predispose to heart failure. I mean, it's been written up in the literature.
So how do we test for CoQ10? How do we know that our CoQ10 levels are good?
Well, you can test the blood level. I mean,
I don't think anyone's ever checked my CoQ10.
Well, you got to ask for it. There's certain labs that do it in the country, not in every lab. But in my area, when I was in Connecticut, I asked Quest Labs. I said, will you draw this for me? Because when I was chief of cardiology, he said, absolutely. And I was sending them 40, 50 people a week. They were happy. But I was testing CoQ10 levels like crazy because you know how doctors used digoxin, for example, years ago, or ACE inhibitors. We would use ACE inhibitors. Yeah. And we would start off on a low dose, and we would then double a dose and double a dose again, because we build up a blood level. Because we found out that certain blood levels of drugs, you were in a sweet spot where the blood level, if it was too low, it didn't work, or if it was too high, it would become toxic. So drugs like ACE inhibitors were like this, drugs like Linoxin were like this. And the same thing is true of CoQ10. If you have a subliminal CoQ10 level, that's not going to do any good. It's not going to be therapeutic. And what I realized in my experience is I had to drive CoQ10 levels 5 to 7 times normal in very, very sick people. So in other words, being a vegetarian, I would suspect your blood level of CoQ10 to be probably 0.4 to 0.5 UGs per ml.
I'm not I eat, if I have any animal product, it might be fish.
Oh, great.
And
Fish
yeah,
is one of the CoQ10.
but I primarily eat vegan, a lifestyle or whole food, plant-based, organic, and then once a week, maybe, or once every 2 weeks, I might have fish.
Do you have, let me ask you a question. Anchovy?
No. No, but sardines.
Oh, sardines. Lillian, it's music to my ears.
Are you loving me right now? Small fish, small fish.
Sardines are loaded with CoQ10.
Oh, good.
Great source of CoQ10.
Okay.
Great source of calcium. As a woman, you need a little calcium, for strong bones and everything. You don't need too much, and sardines have DMAE. It's a chemical in the brain that makes you think clearer. It's really great for mental clarity. And sardines have these, what we call these peptides in them that lower blood pressure.
Ooh.
I think sardines are an incredible fish to eat.
Yeah.
I'm all in on sardines. And my next fish is migratory salmon.
That's the other one I'll have.
If you eat salmon, you're going to get not only astaxanthin in the salmon flesh, which is 50 times more powerful than vitamin C and E. It's a remarkable carotenoid. I absolutely love it. It's great for women's skin. It's great for taking the lines out of the skin. Astaxanthin coming from salmon is wonderful. I did one of my products with Healthy Directions. We did a seaweed. We call it Astra Real. And it's loaded with astaxanthin. And astaxanthin, it's been about 10,000 publications in the medical literature. It's great for the retina of the eye. It's great for the heart. It's great for your skin. It's great for the brain as well. It's one of these, nutrients that you can take to the bank, and it's found in migratory salmon, even nitric oxide,
Yeah, I don't get anything that's farm raised or anything like that.
Only migratory.
So, yeah.
If you can get it from, Scotland or, the North Sea, that's great. But if you get migratory, I like Vital Choice, in Alaska, and they're out in Seattle. They do a great salmon, and they've tested their fish as well. So I really like that.
Very good. Very good. So, okay. So with that in mind, because I want to make sure that we get to as many. So if you guys have any questions, please ask your questions, put in a queue, and we'll answer. I don't know. I didn't even ask you, Dr. Sinatra, are you pressed for time afterwards? Do you have an engagement or anything?
Yeah, I have a dinner engagement at 6:30. So
okay,
we can go to 6:15.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so one of the things that I do want to do now is I want to make sure that all of you that are listening to this information is brought to you because we have so many wonderful sponsors that are stepping forward and saying, we believe in this information. This information you don't see in the mainstream media. And this is where we go to, not only when you need a friend, but when you want to take ownership and responsibility for your life. So go to whenyounneedafriend.com and please become a subscriber. And while you're there, click onto my social media, Facebook, YouTube, BitChute, Instagram, Twitter, whatever it is. Please follow us, like us, do the thumbs up, subscribe in my YouTube and BitChute. That way, if, with all the censoring that's happening now, you never know where you're going to find me next. So while we'll be able to go on Facebook and YouTube, I'm very grateful. But we need to subscribe to my website as well, because if you need to get a hold of me, at least you'll know you can find me there. Now, while you're doing all this and you get all a bunch of free gifts, check out my sponsors at whenyounneedafriend.com. My sponsors, without my sponsors, there would probably be no class. So I want to make sure that you check out my sponsors, Nori Nutraceuticals, Keep Me Safe Organics, which is beauty products that are safe, no chemicals, all organic, no synthetics. We have First Alternative Care, telemedicine for family practice, dermatology, and unlimited, by the way, unlimited, and 3 hours a year of behavioral health counseling for the entire household. If you go into my website and click on it, it's $19.99 for the entire household. This is a special pricing for all you followers of the Lillian McDermott Radio Show. If you want to learn more, click on the link as well. We have the pharmacy in Merritt Island that's taking medications and putting them topically so it doesn't go through your GI system. And if you mention my name, you get discounts there as well. Live Longer Medical, we're going to have them on next week. They are making you as beautiful on the inside as they are on the outside. And of course, we have affiliate programs like Brain Tap, Ground Therapy, which we're going to talk about Ground Therapy. Dr. Sinatra is a fan of Ground Therapy, and also Avasia.
Research.
Yeah, you did it. That's why you're the big fan. You did all the research for them. And so First Alternative Care Therapy, which is Avasia. So check them out and make sure you support them the way they're supporting the classroom. And last but not least, you can become a sponsor, an enrolled student of the classroom, whether you can donate $1 or $1,000 a month, whatever it is, whether it's your time, your talent, or your treasure. Please figure out ways that you can help us grow the classroom. Today, we're talking to Dr. Stephen Sinatra. And Dr. Stephen Sinatra, you can find him at drsinatra.com. He is amazing. From the first time I learned about Dr. Sinatra, I fell in love with him. Can you imagine? I call them the Swiss Army knife of doctors, of cardiologists. Many cardiologists have 7 minutes with you, and all they do is prescribe medication. What I want to talk about next with Dr. Sinatra are statins. Some of the good things, like I know from reading the book that there's like a small, like good guys between the ages of 40 and 70. If you have had, there's some indication that it might work for them, but for the women and the majority of the people, buyers beware. So Dr. Sinatra, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and so being so excited to share this information. I just see you as so excited to learn, even something that you learned 40 years ago, you're relearning in a new and incredible way. And by the way, 407-373-5959, claim it in the chat, in the comment section that you want this book, but you need to text me at 407-373-5959. And I'm not going to draw names until Friday. So if you're listening on podcasts, on YouTube, on BitChute, whatever it is, just make sure you claim it. We're going to pick 3 people randomly. So we'll put your name in the winner's basket. So let's talk about statins, because statins and all these ACE inhibitors, all these things that people are being prescribed, instead of changing their lifestyle or maybe following your protocol. Let's talk about statins, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Oh boy, that's okay. Let's do it. Let's talk about
Let's do it.
Oh my gosh. Okay, going back, after reading that paper in the Indian literature, like I mentioned, I started to question statins, and I started to read the original studies. Now, when doctors do studies, they talk about absolute risk and relative risk. Mm-hmm. Absolute risk is what you really want to key on. So if there's like a 5% reduction in absolute risk, you can really sink your teeth in it. Mm-hmm. But if there's a slight reduction in relative risk, it doesn't mean anything. And we explain the absolute risk and the relative risk in the book, so people really understand this. This is how medical studies become skewed. In other words, if you can prevent one heart attack in 100 people over 5 years, well, that's not very much efficacy. Let's face it. And this is some of the data that comes out. So you have to take.
You can prevent one heart attack.
Heart attack over 5 years, in people taking statins. This is some of the data that we were seeing, but this is the absolute risk data. However, like I said, most of the data is reported in relative risk, which doesn't mean anything. That's the thing. Yeah. And Johnny and I were becoming psychotic because we kept on reading the original research and we're going, oh no, geez. If it's over my head as a doctor, what's it like for the consumer?
Absolutely, yeah.
But let's look at some of these studies. And the one study that blew me away was the West Scotland study. And I actually have been to Scotland, Lillian. And I've seen it firsthand. People in Scotland smoke like crazy. There's no doubt about it. They are smoking all the time. Unbelievable. So this West of Scotland study, they took these smoking men, 2 packs a day, these men, and they put them on, the statin-like drugs. Well, the heavy smokers who were on the statin drugs, they were doing better than the people on placebo. And this caught my eye. And basically, when I looked at the original data, the researchers said it had nothing to do with lowering cholesterol. In other words, the statins were lowering cholesterol, and that's what the researchers wanted you to believe was the real deal. But statins do more than lower cholesterol. They're what we call pleiotropic. They have pleiotropic effects. They thin the blood. Which is kind of cool. Thinner blood is better for the body. They also act like antioxidants, meaning that they can tie up free radicals in the blood. And these researchers that did this study like 30 years ago in the west of Scotland, these smoking Scottish men, they were finding out when the blood was going through the spleen that the statins changed the shape of the red blood cells. We call that rheology. And as the blood was going through the spleen, the shape was changed and it became more favorable. So the men on statins did better, but it had nothing to do with cholesterol lowering. And that really penetrated my core. I said, oh my God, this is good stuff. This is good stuff. So then I was thinking about this and I looked at, I've dealt with heart disease all my life and, high risk men, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that if you're a man, based on my clinical experience and all the literature I've read and all the stuff about absolute risk and relative risk and statins and non-pharmacological therapies, if I came down with coronary artery disease and being less than 75, based on what I've read and my clinical experience, I would put a male, not a child, not a male over 75, and not a woman. I don't want to be dogmatic. I might use it in a few women with advanced coronary disease, but very few. Mm-hmm. But the reason why it works, a low dose statin in a male works, because if you combine it with a lot of coenzyme Q10, I think going forward, that's good medicine. And even now in the new edition, I still agree that treating using a low dose statin in a high risk male is the way to go with coenzyme Q10. But I'm not going to give
and lifestyle changes as well. And lifestyle changes.
Lifestyle changes, yes, across the board.
Yeah.
But would I give a male 5 or 10 milligrams? Yes. Would I give him 80 milligrams? No. Low dose statin, high dose CoQ10, a lot of omega-3. I mean, I believe in resveratrol and turmeric. I mean, I could go on, ask this Anthony I talked about. I can go on and on. I mean, there's so many things I believe in. But again, I'm a conventional cardiologist in recovery, but I'm also, an integrative cardiologist. I use the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
So when I was treating men with coronary disease, low dose statins, CoQ10, lifestyle changes, I would mix it up, mind, body, whatever it takes. Look, one thing a good doctor will do, Lillian, a good doctor will use any tool in his chest to get his patient well.
Yes. Yes.
Any tool that works.
Yeah.
Hey, getting a dog, I think could be life-saving for people, especially when they've been widowed or widowed. If they became a widower or a widow, I would tell people to go to a home and pick out a dog or let the dog pick them out.
Yeah.
I found that loneliness is a killer.
Oh, yeah.
Again, being absolutely. A psychotherapist, I would tie into mind-body relationships. But I found I would recommend pets to my patients all the time. That's why I developed Ageless Paws. I mean, pets bring so much to the table. It's incredible what pets do for humans. Not only dogs, but cats too. I mean, they can be a lifeline for us. Because you know what? If you lose a vital connection in your life, it's a disaster. There's no question about it. I mean, Holmes wrote about this, the 100 worst, stresses in your life. And, the loss of a spouse is at the top. The loss of a child is at the top. Let's face it. So when you go through this loneliness, this intense heartbreak, and this is one of the reasons why I wrote the book, Heartbreak and Heart Disease, when you go through this and you lose a vital connection, what you need to do to avoid sudden death in yourself is establish a new connection, whether it be a relationship, a pet, a synagogue, a priest, a church, anything. Anything where you can develop a connection in your heart is what counts. And that's why when I took care of widows or widowers, and I saw the deep sorrow in them and the crying and the loneliness, I got them involved in religion. I got them involved with pets, in clubs, and anything to get them back to being real again, and having feeling again and not feeling dead.
Absolutely. So you want them to find out their why. You want them to connect to wanting to live again. And so finding whatever works for them. Each person is different,
And depression's a killer. It's a killer.
It is. It absolutely is. Real quick, because we only have 5 minutes left before we go on to the teacher's pet conversation, but for the podcast, and for those of you who are listening on podcast, make sure that if you want this book, you know what to do, but you can listen live and join us in the live broadcast whenever we're live. So, okay. So not all fats are created equal.
Oh,
and
yes.
I really want to talk about this because this blew me away. I even went to my husband today and I said, look at this. It says 0 trans fats. And because of this book, I learned to look beyond it, because you also said that if there are any oils like cottonseed and all that, it does have
canola is the worst oil to put in your body.
Canola
is good for machines, Lillian. It's not good for our body.
Isn't that amazing?
You
and it's got GMO. And canola has GMO. You
canola out there, oil users, trust me, throw it in the trash. Even if it's organic and it's not I'll tell you the truth. I sent an article to Connecticut Medicine years ago when I was chief of cardiology, because I was writing in all the medical journals. And I praised canola oil when I was a young cardiologist. Again, I'm going back, years ago. And this professor from Yale sends me a letter, and he said to me, I reviewed your publication for Connecticut Medicine. I loved it. It was great, but I'm tossing it out because you're recommending canola oil. So he sends me a dozen references to read about canola oil. And he says to me, if you read these and you change your position, I'll consider publication, getting it ratified for publication. Lillian, it was amazing. I read these publications. I'm going, oh my God, I believed all this propaganda. Where have I been all my life? You know what I mean?
Right.
You can't read every medical situation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But look, the best oil to put in your body is olive oil. Hands down. Extra virgin olive oil, Lillian. There's more 100-year-old people in the Mediterranean basin. Okinawa had the monopoly on longevity in the world. They had people living to the mid-80s. But recently, the Mediterranean basin, Spain, even Portugal, which is sort of not in the basin, but they use a lot of olive oil, Libya, Italy, Greece, Israel, Crete, you name it. The whole entire basin has more 100-year-old people in the world. And you know why?
What?
Because olive oil takes pro-inflammatory genes. We were talking initially at the beginning of the broadcast about genetics. We're all born with pro-inflammatory genes. We all have them. But olive oil takes these pro-inflammatory genes that we have, and it turns it back to a non-inflammatory state. Now think about that. We all have inflammation in our body, and we know that inflammation is the root cause of not only heart disease, but all diseases. Now we have this elixir, the anti-aging golden elixir, extra virgin olive oil, which takes inflammation out of the body. That's why it's my belief that we see more 100-year-old people. And I'll tell you, when I had Dr. Gonzalez, who wrote all the stuff on the Premed studies, talking at the American College of Nutrition, I invited him over because I'm on the board of directors. When he talked about taking, 4 tablespoons of olive oil a day, not only me, but my colleagues who were at the conference, we all started drinking olive oil. That's why I developed, Vervana.
Vervana. Yeah, I love your olive oil. Yeah.
We use.
When I use a little bit. Yeah.
We use Californian oil because now some of the countries in Western Europe are cutting it with canola oil, because now if it's 75% extra virgin and it contains canola, you can have 100% written on the label. Another bad situation.
Wow.
But the California Growers Council, Vivian, they only allow extra virgin. And by the way, I had to submit my olive oils for analysis. they do chemical analysis on the olive oils, and we've went through taste tests and everything else. By the way, we won a gold medal on our olive oil. So
Awesome, Vervana.
I love my Koronicki and my standard. You know,
I love your spices. I love your spices. They're so good. It's so good. But
did you ever have
okay,
my pasta sauce?
the what?
Did you ever get my pasta sauce?
No, I never got your pasta sauce. I think you ran out when I was there.
You know what? Our pasta sauce is BPA free. I had it all tested and everything, right?
Is it sugar free?
Oh, it has very little sugar. I mean,
Okay.
there's minimal. There's sugar in tomatoes. I mean,
Yeah.
there's sugar in fruit.
Yeah.
But
But no
I gotta
added
tell you,
sugars.
You know what came out today in the last couple of days?
What?
BPA is a carcinogen, and it's BPA's in everything, and it causes sterility in women. I was at the conference, you know, in Arizona last year where they were talking about BPA, and you know, and our pasta sauce is BPA free. In addition to, you know, we passed California Prop 65. I mean, oh my God, I mean, it is as clean as it gets. But anyway, lycopene. Oh, let me tell you this, because you're a woman. Did we ever talk about the lycopene sulforaphane combination?
No.
You ever hear about this before?
Lycopene.
Talked about BRCA2. Remember the BRCA2 gene?
Yeah.
Breast cancer is devastating in women. You know, when a member in my family developed breast cancer in her 40s, well, you know, she developed breast cancer. I researched like crazy. Here I am, a heart specialist. Now I'm researching breast cancer. And I came upon, you know, prostate cancer and breast cancer share a same dialogue. I mean, I learned about this, you know, like 10 years ago. And the dialogue is this: if you take lycopene, which is found in tomatoes, right? It's a powerful antioxidant. It's also found in watermelon. But if you take lycopene with sulforaphane, which is found in broccoli, sulforaphane is an incredible bioflavonoid. If you take these two together and eat them at the same time, lycopene and sulforaphane, instead of getting 2 + 2 = 4, now you get 2 + 2 = 10 or 100. They're so synergistic in the body, and they prevent breast cancer in women and prostate cancer in men.
Ooh.
So
pasta primavera goes well?
Pasta primavera with a red sauce.
With a red sauce. You can put some broccoli and
yes, you put some broccoli in it. So when my daughter-in-law would come over for dinner, you know, to my house, I would always cook broccoli, organic broccoli, and I always served pasta with red sauce at the same time.
Very good.
Of course, I'm healing her. You see, people got to realize there's foods that heal, you know. In fact, I'm writing the book now, High Vibrational Medicine. That's the name of my new book. And I talk about all these healing foods. I mean, there's so many of them. You know, you should have Deanna Minich on your show. She talks about eating the rainbow. She's a PhD. She's on the board of directors with me on the American College of Nutrition. She's a shining star. You know, she's a young woman, and she's a must on your show because she talks about eating the rainbow. Oh, what a great interview.
Yeah, I will do it. We'll do it. Okay. So, because I want to make sure, you know, there are a lot of women taking statins right now. There's a lot of men taking statins.
Yeah.
Let's look at the solution here. Lifestyle changes. I'm sure that, you know, you have your solutions, which is, I'll go real quick because I had Mediterranean Pan-Asian diet is what, exercise, supplements. You talked about L-carnitine, magnesium, D-ribose, CoQ10, mind-body interactions, which are very important, detoxification, and also earthing or grounding.
Grounding, yeah.
Yes. So for women that are on statins, how do you know that this is bad for them? Can they take a test? Can they check and see what their CoQ10 levels are? What do you recommend for someone who is right now taking a statin and they're doing it just because their doctor told them to do it? What would you say to them?
If I was a woman taking a statin, I would go to the internet and I would take responsibility for yourself. I would read all about it, read about the complications in women. There's a woman from San Diego. Her name is Beatrice Golub, Golomb. She gives one of the best lectures I've ever heard. She's a woman. She's anti-statin. And I would tell your listeners to take your own responsibility, because statins cause breast cancer. Statins cause prostate cancer. I mean, statins, they have a lot of baggage. But I use them in middle-aged men with coronary disease. You know, I'm very specific who I use them for. You know, would I use them in a woman with familial hypercholesterolemia that has a family history, devastated with heart attack and sudden death? Probably, because she might have cholesterols of 3, 4, 500, you know? I mean, I'm not going to be rigid, but, you know.
You're going to look at the numbers. You're not going to just
I'm
treat
not looking at the numbers. I'm looking at the whole patient. But when the
whole
numbers go over the scale, over
Correct.
the top, then I got to connect with it. You know what I mean? Every patient is different, Lillian. There's no cookbook medicine when it comes to a statin.
And that's what I dislike most about medication, is that one pill fits everybody, and
Right.
that is not real. And we need to take ownership for our life. Dr. Stephen Sinatra, I am so looking forward to our teacher's pet conversation after the class, but I always love it when you're on. So thank you so much for caring and for loving your patients and all of us with the great information that you just shared today.
Thank you, Lillian.
All of you, remember 407-373-5959. You know what to do. Please remember, we'll be right here waiting for you worldwide at whenyounneedafriend.com. This is Lillian McDermott and Dr. Stephen Sinatra wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day ever. Yeah. Good job.
The opinions and advice expressed on the Lillian McDermott radio show are intended for the individual callers and guests on the program and are presented to our wider audience solely for general educational purposes. Please act responsibly and consult personally with your own medical, psychological, or nutritional expert before taking any steps to improve your life.
Those of you who would like a copy of this book, you need to not just claim it, you need to, and this is for people that are in the United States. If we have somebody who's listening from overseas, do you have this on PDF, Dr. Sinatra? Can you?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so you don't have it on a PDF or Audible or whatever.
Well,
okay, so
what I think it's Audible. You have books in an Audible. And
I just want to make sure that our giveaways for the United States only, because of sending a book overseas might be too expensive.
Oh yeah, it'll be expensive. And
Yeah. So this would be for the United States, for people that are in the United States. So I'm sorry about that, but you can get it yourself. You can go to Amazon right now and get the book.
New edition. Yeah, you can do that.
This is the new edition. I'm telling you, you're ahead of your time, because even something that you wrote 6 years ago, you can revise today and it's still so good. And so all of you know that what to do. We're going to take your names, put it in the winner's basket. And then on Friday, I'll pick some names out. I'll draw it out and hopefully you will win this book. But if you don't, you can get it at Amazon, where they can go to. Can they get the book at drsinatra.com?
No, I don't think so.
Just at Amazon right now. But it's going to be released in October.
Supplements, yeah.
It's being released in October, but I have a copy in my hand and you will too if you are a part of this. Okay. I don't know if you guys have any questions. Let's see. I'm seeing Myrna, you're claiming it. Great. Good job. Thank you so much for being in the classroom today. And Lisa, thank you so much for responding. She says she loves his dog treats. Okay.
Oh, she gets the dog treats. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have
So
a
she
dog,
says,
Lillian?
I don't have a dog.
Oh, okay.
I had a dog. I had a dog, and Max left us too soon. He was 12 when he left, but everything I learned about unconditional love, I learned from Max, basically.
And what was the breed? What was the breed?
He was a Maltese, real tiny, little.
Nice. Yeah.
He was the king of the world. He was the king of the world. So after that, with traveling and the lifestyle that we have right now, it just was unfair to have a dog at this point. And now we're doing condo living, and it's just really hard to have a dog at this point. But maybe someday I'll have another dog. Okay, so let's talk about family history. We earlier talked about how to use genetic testing as a prevention, like turn off that. You can turn on the gene, you can turn off the gene. But a lot of people think about family history. Does high cholesterol or diseases, what would you say as far when it comes to high cholesterol and family history? Do you take that into consideration?
Oh yeah. No, family history is important. Whether it's cancer or neurodegenerative disease, heart disease, especially diabetes. For example, my grandmother and mother both had diabetes. And that's why I watch my weight. I mean, and
you turn that gene off.
Yeah. And even with this viral epidemics going on right now, the best thing a person can do is lose 5 to 10 pounds because you want to keep that hemoglobin A1C as low as possible, as well as the blood sugar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we didn't even talk about sugar and what a terrible killer. Let's talk
Sugar
about,
is really the enemy
let's
of
talk
heart
about,
disease.
okay, let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sugar turns on insulin, and insulin is the most pro-inflammatory hormone. So when you eat a lot of sugar, you're getting surges of insulin. It causes endothelial cell dysfunction. It sets the stage for atherosclerosis. And that's why diabetics, the average diabetic in this country, unfortunately, is 10 to 15 years behind in longevity. Now, think about this, Lillian. Every generation has outlived the other generation.
Mm-hmm.
But now we have 100 million diabetics in the country.
Yeah.
So if 1 in every 3.4 people is diabetic, is the generation that's coming up, is this going to outlive? I don't think so. Mm-mm. I think we're headed on a downturn right now because genetically, for some reason, we can't eradicate this disease. It keeps propping up.
Can that be by design though? Could it be by design? Because, there's such a thing as population control, and we're seeing the foods that are being approved that we're eating.
GMO stuff and everything, the toxic stuff.
All that toxicity, it's feeding, food is feeding the pharmaceutical industry, and the pharmaceutical industry is feeding, the cancer industry, and the cancer industry, it's like, it just seems like it's all feeding each other. And we're like we're the lambs to slaughter.
I don't really get into conspiracy theories. I mean, anything is possible, that. I mean, as a physician, I just think prevention is easier than cure. You mentioned it on your show. And people, they need not believe you or not believe me or even their
They need
doctor.
to do their own research.
They got to do their own. In this day and age, you got to be proactive for yourself. Your best asset is you. There's no doubt about it. But if people are lazy, and they see the wrong health professional, I think it could be a disaster.
Yes, absolutely. In doing some research, I know that you're really big on the emotional aspect and stress and how that, and there is a saying that I absolutely love, and I'm sure you've heard it before. It's by Henry Maudsley. And he said back in, he died in 1918. So he's from 1835 is when he was born, but he was a psychiatrist. And he said, the sorrow which has no vent in tears makes other organs weep. Oh. And I thought that was just so beautiful. And so I wanted to talk to you about you all, when you talk about crying and how that's a release and how that helps, and laughter. And just recently I was laughing while I was crying at the same time. Yeah. So can you share a little bit about that and how there's certain things that we can do for ourselves to help reduce cholesterol, the problems, the heart disease that we're facing nowadays?
Yeah. Heart disease. I mean, Heartbreak and Heart Disease is my best book. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping Vibrational Medicine will be even a better book, but I've written 55 books. And Heartbreak and Heart Disease is amazing because crying is one of the healthiest things you can do to release the heartbreak that we all had. You see, we've all had heartbreak as children, but we stuffed it. Mm-hmm. And when I became a psychotherapist, I realized how much sadness people have. Mm-hmm. And people don't want to touch the sadness because it creates more sadness. It's like unskinning an onion, it's a layer mm-hmm. at a time. Mm-hmm. And when I was in psychotherapy training, I realized how important it is for people to emote, and that's why I became a bioenergetic psychotherapist, because we work with the emotions. We do a lot of anger work, a lot of sadness work. We'll do things where we'll try to bring out tears and crying, and we'll even ask people to get into anger and hit a pillow, and there's lots of things you can do to there's certain mechanisms that you can get the person to really emote, because in other words, we don't want to stuff the emotions in because it causes heart disease, or high blood pressure. People that we used to call them hot reactors, but it's like driving a car with your brakes on. where your peripheral resistance and your blood vessels go up, your blood pressure goes up, and you're at risk for dissection of the aorta, sudden death, heart attacks, you name it. But like the healthiest thing you can do to alleviate the psychological arousal on the autonomic nervous system is to have your tears. And remember, tears contain endorphins. So when you release these endorphins, you're releasing all these healing modalities via the ocular segment of the eye. So I think it's so important to cry. I remember when I was in psychotherapy, I couldn't cry. Mm-hmm. I was an athlete all my life. My dad, sometimes he would get upset with me and I'd get strapped and stuff like that. And if I cry, he would say, stop crying, I'll give you something to cry about. So I stopped crying. I made up that rule, right?
Yeah.
But as a heart specialist, I realized how important crying is and I couldn't cry as an adult. Mm-hmm. So I went into therapy. I still couldn't cry. I saw the best therapist in the world. Then I'm sitting in a movie theater and I'm seeing the movie Hoosiers with Gene Hackman. Do you remember that movie?
Yeah. It
was a David and Goliath movie. But I had a high school wrestling coach that looked just like Gene Hackman. And we were a wrestling power. So we weren't we were the Goliath, so to speak. But when I was watching the underdogs, these 6 kids on a basketball team win the Illinois, the Kentucky State Championship.
Yeah.
That was amazing. I got a chill in my body right now. And it brought out my own athleticism. And when I saw the underdogs just beat this impossible team, I cried. It was spontaneous. And I'll never forget, I had my 8-year-old son in the movie theater. He goes, Dad, you're crying. And I'm going, yeah, Drew, I really need this right now, because I knew I was healing my body. Lillian, I saw the movie 5 times. And I cried every time. And I discharged a lot of the sadness I had built up. But you see, when people go to a movie and they cry, they say, oh, the movie made me cry. That's not it. We all have sadness. The movie touched your sadness and you gave yourself permission to cry. So that's the key here. We all have sadness. We all have anger. We all need to have these emotions taken out of our body, because when you stuff them, the body suffers and the heart suffers the most. Yeah. And we've learned that through hot math. We've learned this. See, there's conversations between the heart and the brain. Mm-hmm. There's it goes through the vagus nerve. There's conversations that go on. We don't hear the conversations because it acts like this. It's spontaneous. But basically, people who cry more are going to live longer.
I love it. But crying as a victim is different than crying as somebody. Yeah.
Yes. Well, that's why when you cry as a victim, if you cry as a victim in the presence of a psychotherapist, the psychotherapist will empower you even more. So in other words, we don't want you to be a victim. It's okay to be a victim, but then if you work with your victim-like state, because after you're a victim, instead of seeing your cup as half empty, you're going to see it as half full.
Correct.
That's the metaphor of a victim. We want to see your cup half full now. It's not half empty.
Yes. And, I was interviewing John Gray from Mars and Venus books, and he said,
great author.
Yes. And he said something which was going to help me as a certified life coach with my clients. But he said that victimization releases dopamine, and people get addicted to being a victim.
Yeah, exactly. They need
I did not realize that. That was like, I had to stop and just take that in, because sometimes you just don't understand, why are they being a victim? Why are they being a victim? Why do they feel they don't have choice? Why? And I just didn't realize.
They're getting something out of it.
They're getting something out of it.
It's on a subconscious level.
Yeah, exactly. That was huge for me. Just like, and finding out the first time I interviewed you, finding out about tears, I haven't really cried in a long time. And it's like, okay, now it's okay to cry. Because I used to cry all the time. I used to feel people's pain. I used to feel, I'd get up sad for people that just didn't quite get it. And I would cry their tears. That's how bad it was. And I would be made fun of by my family. So I grew very tough. I was like, I'm not going to be made fun of. I'm not going to cry anymore. So I don't cry as much as I used to. But, when I learned that it's okay to cry, and by that even crying and laughter, produce that same, it was just so liberating.
Well, Norman Cousins figured that out with his ankylosing spondylitis. He laughed his way for years, out of pain.
Yeah.
He got the endorphin discharge. So
Yes.
That's good.
Yes.
Lillian,
Okay.
I have another commitment at 6:30.
I know. This has been great.
Any question we need or?
No. I was going to ask you real quick for testing and what kind of tests that people should, but we already discussed that people can ask for certain tests.
Yeah. They can ask the doctors to get the subtypes for LDL, HDL, but blood sugar and hemoglobin A1C are important. Everything's in the book.
And get this book. And if you don't buy it, then try at least for getting one of the 3 books that we're giving away. Dr. Sinatra, just absolutely adore you. Thank you so much for everything that you do to create awareness that we are the keepers of our temple. That was the word. I'm like chapel, temple. We are the keepers of our temple. So thank you so much. And we'll see you all, guys.